Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the Thursday, January 26, 2023 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening, commissioners and everyone present. Thanks very much for your time. Our first item of business is public hearing and public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for a public hearing or public comment about any of the items that are not on the agenda? Sure. Okay. So I'll vamp. We do have a couple of public hearings on the agenda, and anyone who wishes to address the commission on those public hearings will get a chance to do so when those agenda items come up. But it doesn't sound like we have anyone signed up for other public hearings, so we'll pause for a minute before we get on to item 3A, which will be consideration of an action of the minutes from our January 10th meeting. So please stand by. All right, please vote at this time. And that passes unanimously among members present. Item 4A. So this is the first of several presentations and public hearings that we'll do. This one relates to a proposed permanent rezoning from standard single-family residential interim R1I to multifamily residential R4 for the existing Broadstone New Territory apartments located at 555 and 556 New Territory Road. Laura, good evening. We'll hear your presentation, and then I'll open the public hearing.
Sounds good. So to get started, this is for an existing multifamily complex. So this was platted back in 1997 and then built, and then was later annexed in 2017 with the rest of the New Territory subdivision. Per our standard annexation process, it was zoned R1 interim because it was residential upon entry into the city. And the current property owner is proposing to move to R4 in order to better match the existing existing development. So in case of catastrophe or issue on the property, they can rebuild the existing site as it currently is. So as I mentioned, this is an existing development, and it is compatible with R4 regulations. There are some single-family residential areas nearby, and while the site doesn't exactly line up with R4 because it was developed outside of the city, it does meet the intent of R4, which is quality apartments in a medium density setting, and the majority of regulations are met. It is the most compatible with the built environment. As well, the future land use map was examined, and this R4 zoning is not in conflict with that future land use designation of medium density mixed use. The R4 zoning does allow for reconstruction in case of catastrophe or any issues at the moment, with the future mixed use zoning to be placed at any time of redevelopment. Public hearing qualifications were all met. FAQs and an email blast were also sent to the New Territory HOA and the subdivisions that were immediately adjacent to the property. We also sent out mailers per the state requirements and published the notification in a newspaper and on the website. Staff has received no inquiries, and we are not aware of any opposition. Therefore, we do recommend holding the public hearing followed by consideration and action tonight, and staff does support a recommendation of approval, and the applicant also has a short presentation. So if you want to come up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Katie Harris with LJA Engineering. I am here representing the applicant. I also have Katie Vanderveen here as a representative of the ownership team. I don't have a whole lot more to add other than what has already been stated, but as mentioned, we generally just want to bring the property into compliance with existing zoning. Should anything happen to the property in the future, it's just one less thing that needs to be done in order to bring the property back to its current standard. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have any specific questions about the property or the company in general, the other Katie will be able to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura, anything else from you?
That'll be it. That concludes our presentation, and we're ready for the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. We will receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on a proposed permanent rezoning from standard single-family residential interim R1I to multifamily residential R4 for the existing Broadstone New Territory apartments located at 5555 and 5556 New Territory Boulevard. Do we have anyone that wishes to address the commission in public hearing? Going once? Going twice? All right, at this time, I will close the public hearing, and we'll move on to consideration of an action on a recommendation on this item. Any discussion from the commissioners? Any questions? I can go up and down the row if we do, but yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so Lauren, thanks for the presentation. What happens where the current structures do not meet the R4 regulations?
So in the event that something were to happen, a disaster, a fire, something like that, when they rebuild, they would go through what we call a special exception process with our zoning board of adjustment. So that would be a fairly simple, straightforward process. They follow the platted restrictions, which is the documents that you saw here. So these are what they would follow as they would have to be built to this per the special exception process.
So we're trying to simplify things here from what I understand. So is there any way to already give them those?
Unfortunately, no, because the current standards are 15 feet, but the buildings are at 10 feet. The only way for them to go back at 10 feet is if they go through the special exception process. At the time, they would have the option of rebuilding their building at 15 feet if they so chose.
Okay, thanks.
So, just a couple of questions. If the buildings are only 10 feet apart, does the city look into any compliance for fire-rated partitions?
That begins at 5 feet separation. So because they meet the 10 feet separation, they meet all of our current building codes.
They do.
As far as the 10-foot firewall separation, yes, because that begins at 5 feet for residential buildings.
But this is multifamily, right? They're tall.
30 to 40 feet.
Has that been looked into?
Well, it would be looked into at the time of the building permit process. They would have to meet all standard fire and building codes whenever they rebuild.
Okay. I also noticed that the required parking is $498 and what's provided is $466, which is about 6% off for both the properties, 5555 New Territory and 5556 New Territory. Is that a concern
No,
for the city?
So it's not a concern for us. They tend to not be overparked. There's not any overflow traffic. Staff is not concerned about the parking situation. And they would be able to rebuild with the existing structures and layouts, unit counts, and the current parking. If they chose to add on in the future, they would not be able to. That's what constrains them right now is their parking. They would have to be able to park any additional structures. And because the lots are already developed, they couldn't meet that. So that's why they're basically capped at this point because they can't make any additional parking.
Okay. That's it. Nothing further. Thank you.
Any questions?
I did.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
No.
No, go ahead, Tim. You're first.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim, please.
Just looking at, so if it's rezoned R4, does that mean, I noticed that they are under the amount of units per acre that they're allowed 17 and 19, and they're allowed 20 by R4? And I don't know that there's space on this plot to do that, but could they theoretically add, you know, this is 15 acres, 3 more, 45 apartments at 55, 55, and 13 apartments at 55, 56.
So as I mentioned before, they could not add any more units because they cannot park them.
Okay.
You would have to add parking spaces in
wanna
order
make
to
sure,
meet
okay.
compliance. Mhm.
That was
Maybe is that your question?
Well, that was related to that, but they could tear down and they could upsize. I think it's the delta is like 60 units. If you do the math, 20 acres times, sorry, it's like about 18 acres in total times 20. That would be like an addition of 60 units. It's unlikely that they're going to tear the whole thing down and redevelop it, but that's allowed. There's more units allowed, correct? Per acre.
Technically, yes, but they would have to then come into complete compliance with setbacks, any residential proximity CUPs. They would have to go through and meet all of our parking requirements, setbacks. All of that would have to come into play.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty much the gist of my question as well.
Commissioner Brown?
Get that queued up here. My only question is, there's how many buildings on this site? Is it 4?
No, it's quite a few more than that. You know how
1,
many
2, 3,
buildings
4,
there
5,
are?
6, 7, 8. So my question essentially is, if there's a partial event here, one building could be built back. It's not, the whole site doesn't have to be redeveloped if one.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm just wondering, why did it take 5 years for this request to come in if we annexed in 2017?
So we leave interim zoning until the property owners request it or they move forward with redevelopment. So the new property owners wanted to move forward with permanent zoning. So that is why we're taking it forward now. Typically, we would wait until they are ready for redevelopment, or if something happens at that time, we would then rezone them to whatever they want to do after their catastrophe.
Okay. So there was new property owners recently.
Yes.
And as I understand it, tell me if I have this correctly or not, Laura, there, as we sit here today, there's no redevelopment that's contemplated at all. This
Correct.
is strictly a pretty straightforward zoning change. In the event there's catastrophic, God forbid, there's some type of catastrophic damage, this change would give the owner the ability to make the repairs and modifications that would need to be made consistent with this zoning category, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I will move that we recommend approval of a permanent rezoning from standard single-family residential interim R1I to multifamily residential R4 for the existing Broadstone New Territory Apartments located at 5555 and 5556 New Territory Boulevard to members of City Council. I've got a second from Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion? Please vote at this time. And that passes unanimously among the members present. Thanks, Laura. Thank you, applicant. Appreciate it for your comments on behalf of the applicant, and thank you, commissioners. Item 4B, we will now talk about the proposed conditional use permit for animal services, boarding, and daycare for a canine pet resort facility at 14033 Southwest Freeway, Suite 705. Laura, it looks like you're doing like quintuple duty tonight, so we'll hear from you, and then I'll open the public hearing.
Okay, so the next item is for a canine resort CUP. That's going to be for animal services for boarding and daycare. Those are treated simultaneously, they are the same thing per our code. They're combined into one use, and they both require a conditional use permit. So this site, although it could technically be allowed to do overnight boarding, the current operations for the business does not involve overnight boarding. It is just a doggy daycare. So this is located in the park at Sugar Creek, which is a commercial development at the front of Sugar Creek off of 59. So this is at the bottom corner there at Parkway and the Southwest Freeway. It is fairly removed from most of the single-family residential, and therefore staff is taking it forward for this conditional use permit due to the lack of residences in the area. This is an existing vacant building. It is used to be a jewelry store, jewelry and watch store and repair. That is existing 9,750 square feet. And they, applicants are proposing to add an additional 3,500-ish square feet of outdoor area that would be screened with an 8-foot opaque fence. And then there is additional landscaping placed around the exterior of that fence as well for additional buffering. As I mentioned, there's no nearby residential property. There is no overnight boarding, and also there's no unsupervised animals outdoors. There is always an animal technician whenever the animals are outdoors in that area. The conditional use permit is not in conflict with our land use plan as part of a neighborhood activity center. So this is a floor plan. This part is not to be codified just in case they wanted to do some shuffling of their rooms, but just to give you an idea of how the facility actually works. There are internal areas, an area for drop off, some other cleaning and things like that. The applicant is here to talk through any questions you have about the actual operations interior to the building. And then this area at the back of the building, this is going to be the new fenced in outdoor area. So I just wanted to be able to show you guys that, let you know exactly what it's going to look like. The site plan here also shows the floor plan as well as the outdoor area and some of the surrounding parking spaces. There is an existing row of parking here that is going to be removed as part of this expansion with the outdoor area, but the site as a whole does have a shared parking agreement, and there is plenty of parking for both this site and all of the existing sites with extra spare. So we are not concerned about the removal of those few spaces. Elevations of the building, including what the fence is going to be looking like, as well as what it's made of, are included as well in the CUP. And a landscape plan that shows that double row of hedges, as well as some additional ornamental trees, and all of the existing landscaping is to remain. As I mentioned, this area is in a neighborhood activity center that does include low to mid-rise buildings, small offices, retail, and residential supporting services. As a doggy daycare area, we would consider this a supporting service, so it is in line with that neighborhood activity center. The land use plan also does give us some guidance as to conditional use permits, what might be suggested. So sound barriers and additional landscaping are the ideal buffers mentioned for existing structures. Public hearing requirements were all met, mailers sent out, published notification in the paper as well as online. And again, staff has received no inquiries and we are not aware of any opposition to this use. Therefore, we do recommend holding the public hearing and consideration and action tonight. And we do support a recommendation of approval to mayor and city council. And as I mentioned, the applicant is present for any questions that you might have after the public hearing concludes. Thank you.
I just want to say one clarification. We do.
Just introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Michael. I'm with the owner. Michael Dorr.
Thanks.
Nice to meet all you guys. We do overnight boarding, so I just want to clarify that we do overnight boarding.
You do okay.
Yeah.
Dogs only?
Dogs only. We get that a lot. No kidding. Everybody asks.
I meant cats, but.
I know. You'd be surprised. We get more asked for kids than cats.
Okay, so it is overnight. Laura?
So we'll have to amend the ordinance when we write it.
So if y'all, well, I'll get to my point. So any other presentation? Okay,
Yes,
then, all right, thank you, Laura, and thank you to the applicant. Okay, at this time, I will open the public hearing. We will receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on a proposed conditional use permit for animal services, boarding, and daycare for a canine pet resort facility at 14033 Southwest Freeway, Suite 705. Do we have anyone that would like to address the commission in public hearing? Last call. All right, I will close the public hearing and we'll move on to consideration of an action on the recommendation for this item. If y'all don't mind, quick question, Laura. So in light of that, I think our materials suggested that there was not going to be any overnight boarding, but we now hear that there are. You've had 2 minutes to think about it. Does that change city staff's recommendation to the commission at all?
No, it doesn't, because they are considered the same use per our ordinances and our supporting documents. So long as there's no dogs outdoors overnight, that would be the only potential change in recommendation, is maybe adding that condition to the ordinance.
Okay. You want to? Okay. Is there, if y'all don't mind, if y'all permit me, since I've started on this.
Yep.
So the facility's manned 24 hours?
We don't man overnight. We have monitoring for fire, burglar, those type of things, and cameras that our managers and staff can all access for any and motion sensors for if there's any movement or anything like that.
Okay.
Not manned overnight, but the standard hours for us are 6:30 opening is when our staff arrives, and then closing 7:30 to 8 o'clock at night.
Okay, so from 8 p.m. to 6:30 a.m.,
Not manned,
it's not manned.
but we've
Okay,
got the motion sensors and all the other standards.
interesting. Okay. All right, thank you. Any commissioners have questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I had one more
Sure.
So Chuck did point out that in the letter that was provided as part of the application, there was a letter of support from a councilwoman in New Jersey for a similar site that was provided at the dais for you.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you, Commissioner Brown, for your question, and thanks to Laura, you and staff for answering the question. Okay, any questions from any commissioners? Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, Lauren, thanks for the presentation. One question I had, does the ordinance have any restrictions around the number of dogs that can be at the?
That is up to you
Resort?
guys. We do not make a recommendation on that, but if you would like to add a maximum number of animals, that is up to you guys to add as a condition if you so wish.
Yeah, I mean, that would be where we'd have to have, I think, probably a bit more information around the boarding or how many boarding rooms there are. I just was curious as if there's any kind of ordinance even within the city.
We do not have an existing doggy daycare ordinance.
Okay.
Okay,
Otherwise, I
so-
would have suggested some different conditions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's just,
Well, for my part, I think we're going to need to hear from the applicant as far as what's customary
Yeah.
at these types of locations of this size. I'd at least like to hear that, so I apologize for the
Nope.
interruption.
Yeah,
but
so
why don't you
we're a
address that?
just give you guys a little bit of background on us. We're a franchise originally based out of New Jersey. We're the franchisee here in Houston. We're doing at least 8 of these throughout Houston. We do have an open location currently in the Energy Corridor. We're actively working on locations in Katy here and then the Heights. But our whole branding and everything like that is focused on the happiness and healthiness of the dogs. We do focus on the luxury demographic. So that's really what we're targeting. So the majority of our rooms are cage-free rooms. So what that means, we have luxury suites. They're 9x8 rooms. We have executive rooms that are 5x7 rooms. That's probably 60 to 70% of our boarders. We do have some traditional style rooms. We don't do any wired crates or anything like that because we don't want dogs getting their paws hurt or they're jumping on it, those type of things. So we don't overpack the facility is kind of what I'm getting at. Because we take up so much of our space with boarding rooms. We also, for the daycare perspective, we limit how many dogs we're allowed to have in both our large and small daycare based off of the square footage of the interior. That way, if there's ever bad weather, if it's too hot, too cold, we're not requiring or relying on that space. So it's like we have a minimum of, it's like 15 square feet per dog in large and then 10 square feet per dog in small daycare. So we separate our daycares by size, and they're always staff members in there at all times. So even that exterior, so what I'm saying is when you look at up here, we've got the square footage of the exterior. We don't rely on that for our extra space or for required space. We want to make sure the dogs have plenty of space, even if they need to be inside.
yeah, thank you for that. But how many dogs would you be boarding at night then? What's your
I'd have to
calculation there?
relook at and count the number of rooms we have in here. I don't know it off the top of my head. 80 rooms. So we'd have 80 total rooms, give or take if some people, some of our rooms, we allow them to have 2 dogs in there. So I'd say with 80, it'd be about a maximum of we have 74 rooms at our current place. The most dogs we've ever had there tonight is 104 around Christmas time. So 80, maybe scale that up slightly.
Okay. I guess I would just be concerned about that many animals being left unattended for that period of time at night.
So the standard practice in the industry is for that to be any overnight care there. The reason we don't have overnight care there is, number one, dogs obviously hear very well. They were bred along the way to be our alert animals. So if they hear anybody in the facility, they start waking up, they're barking, doing all sorts of those type of things. So they're going to wake all the dogs up in the facility. So we have, like I said, the motion sensors, burglar alarms, fire alarms. So even if a dog were to somehow get out of its room, which never happened for us before, but it somehow were to get out of its room and it's in a hallway, we have a motion sensor that has an alarm that immediately alerts our managers, and we can go take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner DeWitt, did you have a question?
Yes, I think this being in a neighborhood activity center and other businesses being in the vicinity, having an opaque fence, I'm not convinced that people that are walking outside or biking outside would not actually hear the dogs when they're outside. Because when I walk outside, I can hear, the dogs can hear me walking. They don't have to necessarily see, and they bark, and we can hear them through the fence. So I think, and then, over time, fences do wear and tear. So I think I see that it writes that it's going to be an 8-foot tall fence, and somehow that 8-foot height would deter the noise. But I'm telling you from experience and walking in the neighborhoods, it doesn't. You can hear a dog bark. And now we're multiplied by 100 or however many you take them outside. I think you do need to consider putting a more permanent fence,
Yeah, so
something that's masonry.
Yeah, so the fence is not like slatted, like a wood fence or anything like that. It's a company called Buff Tech. I don't know.
It's in the materials, yeah.
Yeah, and so and then like said, it's 8-foot tall fence. Dogs also bark down; they don't bark up, so it help mitigate the sound. The other thing is our whole facility. Like I said, we target the luxury demographic. We are mitigating sounds in everything that we do. The other thing is when dogs get amped up, they bark. What we don't want to have happen in our daycare is a dog that's amped up and barking and getting all the other dogs amped up and then having a commotion happen. So if a dog is getting overly stimulated, we'll go ahead and take them inside to one of our boarding rooms and give them a timeout, let them settle back down before we bring them back outside. So really, dogs bark, like you said. There is noise that is made, but the whole facility it was built out in a manner to help limit noise, and then our operations are also help mitigate that as well.
I don't have concerns because I don't know what the facility is made of and how did you mitigate for sound inside. I'm talking about outside and the fenced area. It's the fence that it concerns me. And if there can be if you could consider you haven't explained what sort of fence you're going to put in.
So I think it's in the materials section. I don't know if that's over. So it's the company's called Buff Tech. Essentially, our franchise has gone through many iterations of looking at different fences, all the different types of things. The Buff Tech is the one that holds up the best from a strength perspective from hurricanes, and then also does the sound mitigation. So that's that.
What is it built of? What is it?
I mean,
is it wood, plastic,
no,
steel?
it's more like a
masonry?
plastic PVC material.
Yeah, he needs to, why don't you come up, sir, and introduce yourself and join the conversation.
Sorry, this is my other business partner, Matthew.
Hello, I'm Matthew Evancho. I was saying that the fencing is more of a plastic, but it's you can't see through it or anything, so the dogs won't be able to see people walking by or anything. It's pretty thick in terms of it's a couple inches thick.
So yeah, I mean, it's not like you're walking in a neighborhood 6-foot tall wood fence that has, a lot of sound passing through it. And then we also have the additional landscaping to help mitigate any additional sound.
How does this fence, whatever it is, represent the neighborhood community center and all the other businesses that are there? Does it blend well?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a very, I mean, I don't have any photos with it on me, but it's a very nice, it looks like almost like a stone style fence, and it's also going to be on the back side of the building, essentially. So from the perspective of cars driving by, there's not going to really be visibility from the major roads going through. It's not, like I said, our whole build out process and everything we're trying to do is very high end. So our build out costs are very significant and all those different things. We're not just kind of slapping together and putting crappy materials out there. It's built for the dogs, to take wear and tear from the dogs, while also being, a very high end and luxury experience from the materials and the cosmetic standpoint of it.
I'm sorry, I'm not still convinced. All I heard was it's plastic, and I don't know how plastic would blend in with.
I have photos on my phone. I don't think
Neighborhood.
I can really share that easily,
And it was
but I
not
can show you
presented, so I'm having a disconnect here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a way I can show a photo from my phone. It's not just like a regular fence, yeah.
Yes, so staff did look into the fencing materials, and this is something that is pretty standard. It looks like masonry from the outside, but it holds up better longer term. It doesn't degrade like masonry does, like weathering and things like that. It's because it is the man-made synthetic material, it doesn't degrade as much. So it looks similar from the outside, but because of the qualities of plastic versus brick, it is better for this purpose.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Other commissioners? Commissioner Hart?
Did staff talk with animal control, since we don't have an ordinance for this? What, we own Petopia, where the folks at Petopia consulted on the population density of this. I have a real hard time approving anything that we don't have any control over. And no offense to the applicant, that they shove 300 dogs in there, and we have no way of knowing that we can stop them doing that unless we put it in here and say we have to have 10 dogs. But I also don't have the ability to discern what is the correct number of dogs per this floor plan. I think, in my opinion, we have to have somebody from staff come in and advise us on what is the safe number of dogs or safe number of animals for the amount of square feet and the pen before I can even make a decision. Honestly, right now, I've got to say no, because I don't know anything about this facility. I don't know what should be in there. I mean, there were other people that were just as shocked that nobody was overnight, but it's the industry standard. Well, I don't know what industry standards are for this. We usually have guidelines. This is not a knock on staff. I'm just saying there's a lot of shortcomings here. I've never seen a facility like this come across to us on planning and zoning. Maybe it has, maybe I wasn't on it at the time, but.
Sure. I think first, just our staff isn't going to go inside a private business like that, our animal control staff, and look at their occupation. That's just not what they're going to do. It's not within their purview of what they're going to do. We can give you more information from them, but that's just, we're going to let the private business operate. That's not what
Right, but like Petopia can say,
yeah.
you know what, APSCA or whatever, SPCA says we recommend one dog per 15 square feet.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm looking for a guideline that says, okay, we can throw in and say, we want that guideline in the ordinance so that they're legally bound to not have, like somebody said, 100 dogs in a small area, or cats or kids, whatever.
Yeah, and I also want to be sure we're being clear on what the concerns are from this. Is it, what are all the kind of concerns, if we can lay those out too, so we can be sure to address.
One is the density or the population of the facility, what is safe and recommended for the animals. Does that vary by animal? I'm sure some, and it varies by size, right? So a large dog needs more space than a small dog. And I know you're going to come up and say the industry standard is this and the industry, I don't know that. And I don't think our staff knows that, or at least they haven't expressed that yet. Again, no fault of their own, but to me, to make that decision, I really need some more information.
So
if and to put it in the same words, restaurants have maximum occupancies. And I think that's kind of what you're asking. Right?
Based on the building codes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and fire codes. Sure.
I was leaning towards the same thing.
Yeah. So you're saying that if the applicant comes up and explains the industry standards,
No, I
we're
need
not
guidance from staff. I need a third party independent. That's what I need from the city. City staff to tell
we
me.
would definitely welcome that. Honestly, from our perspective, yeah, I 100% understand your concerns. Like before I was doing this, I have a dog. Took my dog to places I would never take my dog to, right? And different things. So that's part of the reason why we got into this business and why we specifically chose K9. It's because we really do focus on the happiness and healthiness of the dog. So I understand, like, you're hearing it from me and you want to hear it from some third party. But what I'm saying is I would welcome someone else if they want to come in and discuss that, because I know that we would far exceed any of those expectations, just because you go to some facilities and everybody's crammed into a small little crate. We have weight requirements for every single one of our room sizes, dog limits for every single one of our room sizes that would be much higher and above than any sort of industry standard. So completely understand your concern. From my perspective, if that's what we need to do, I completely understand that because I know that our facility will exceed that far. And that's really the thing it's not just, it's Houston, it's Texas as a whole. Some of the other places the franchisees go, and it's very, very strict and regulated in terms of this is exactly what fits in, and this is exactly what you have to do. And those places are almost easier because you know the rules, right? Whereas, for this type of situation, like you said, there aren't any rules or set out things. So if that's something we need to do, obviously more than welcome and open to it because I know we'll exceed those.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your candor, and it's no slight against you for just saying that. It's just we usually have, there's a staff of professionals that always advise us on certain things, and I'm not getting advised, and I don't want to take responsibility for saying that this is the correct amount of animals that can be stored at this facility.
Yep.
I'm just not comfortable with that.
Yeah, I understand that concern.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have anything else you guys want to say. But.
Trying to figure out what to ask. So I'm trying to understand what the concern is in terms of this particular use, because it is a use that is categorized.
It's not
in
the
our,
use. It's not the use. Let's be clear.
Okay.
I'm not troubled with the use
The
or the
use.
facility
Okay.
itself. I'm looking for guidance on some of the things we've talked about.
So may I help I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
may I try to help on this? Because I want to help you and I want to help you. Okay, so, and the other commissioners haven't spoken yet, so I'm not speaking
Sure.
for everyone. But what I've heard so far, I think what would be helpful are at least two things. One is different description and pictures of the fencing. And I know that there was a description of that in the packet. And in my remarks, I'll probably have something to say about that because I live in Sugar Creek, as most everyone in here knows, and walk and ride past that building all the time. But I think that would be helpful to Commissioner DeWood's questions. What I was going to suggest for Commissioner Hart's question is, because what I'm hearing is that, like, there's no ordinance on it, okay? And I have no problem with Sugarland Animal Services staff weighing in if they've got some recommendations. But what I'm hearing is, if we wanted to, we could, as a condition of at least our recommendation to City Council, we could put a limit in there. And so I would think that this commission would want to be guided by someone who knows what they're talking about. And so if that means, for example, if there is an industry standard, I mean, my questions would be, what's the industry that regulates it? Is the standard published? Is that something that could be provided? Because I'm hearing from the applicant that there has been some consideration of that with respect to the number of dogs that'll be available, that'll be allowed to be there per square foot based on the size of the dog, separating large and small. I think that data is probably out there, but I think it would be helpful to be presented. If the answer is, well, this is industry standard, then I think we need data
Just
from
what's
what
the
the
industry?
standard is.
Yeah.
Show us the standard,
That's all.
and I think that is
That's
very likely to
it's
address the
it's not the
concern.
facility. It's just what exactly what Chairman said.
So I guess my follow-up question would be, so that we understand, what are we mitigating? What are we trying to address from a
Potential overcrowding of the facility.
So more of an operational kind of oversight, or?
Well, that's what I'm hearing, but
So I agree, but I think added to that, from my perspective, since nobody's there, if they have a fire or if there's a flood, how is somebody getting there? And then they have 100 animals to get out of that building. And maybe they have somebody 10, 15 minutes away. Maybe they're 30 minutes away. What happens to those animals?
And one thing, Lisa, if I may add, like sometimes when you put a facility together, you know if it's sprinkled or not. And based on that, you can, you determine the number of occupants, right? I think the number of occupants is yes, how much square footage that dog would need to be comfortable. Because 15 is actually, if I remember correctly, is what is used for humans when they're seated on a chair. And so there is an occupancy load in the international building codes.
Sure, that would definitely be
and that would be for
addressed at
us,
time of-
right? And I
Right.
think there should be something out there that sort of touches upon, how much square footage a dog would need. And if in case of a fire, is there a sprinkler system or not? Like, how do we limit the occupancy of this project?
Yeah, and then to address kind of the sprinklering, I mean, that would be handled through any
Fire
permitting
marshal.
and fire marshal's office and so forth.
Building
yeah.
official, fire marshal. So I
Regardless
think
of the use.
maybe talking to them and having them give us some guidance would help.
But if it needs to be sprinklered, it's maybe
Well-
already, those things
No,
would be handled at
Or,
the.
or, I mean, that's part of occupancy, right?
Which
So-
is not something we typically look at, right? It's in the
Yeah,
code.
but
It's
in
in,
order to
it
restrict
has to,
occupancy-
it's got to go through that to get permitted, which we don't really.
This is about
But
the
this is
use.
about restricting occupancy.
Well, I've stated what I think the information would be helpful to understand it. I mean, I want to also be mindful, it's private property. I'm not an expert in this area. I'm not going to, me personally, this is one person's opinion, I'm not going to suggest an arbitrary occupancy limit because I don't know if that makes the business commercially viable or not. I don't know if it makes sense with respect to safety dogs. So I want to receive that information too from whatever the professional source is that has that, or at least if that nothing like that exists, I'd like to hear a little bit more. For me, I'd like to hear more detailed information about where the business's calculations of how many dogs per square foot based on the size of the dog, et cetera, where that comes from, and maybe even sharing some information about other facilities that use that as a guideline, addressing, any potential safety concerns. So, Lisa, to answer your question, at least what I've heard so far, that's the kind of information it seems like that we'd like to receive.
Okay.
If I have anyone
No,
else
that's
wanna-
exactly right. And I totally agree. The arbitrary number, if we could assign it, but I have no basis to make that decision on. I
Yeah.
really don't. Just
So,
yeah.
let me ask you this, and I have a couple questions myself, unless anyone else can ask.
So I had just real quick on that wall. It extends pretty far down into the side of the building. Is there any sight distance issues with that because it was open before the back wall? Because it goes all the way to the end of the curb. It looks like I couldn't tell because I had such a small print. But
Right.
did anybody look at that?
So yes, this was reviewed by our traffic department.
Okay, so there's no problem
and
with
they actually did a full TIA on this site.
Okay.
So that's been concurred with and signed off on.
And then another question was, so this was, like you stated, a jewelry store, and now it's a facility that's going to have live animals, obviously. What about the waste? How was the waste disposal handled? I didn't see anything in there about that. It doesn't go into the dumpster in the.
So I'll mention that they will have to go through a remodel permitting process, and upgrading their HVAC as well as septic and sewer might be part of that as well. And I'll let Michael speak to the rest of that.
Yeah, so just to jump back real quick, we are adding fire risk sprinkler to the facility. That's one of the things that we require of ourselves for each of these. It's typically not a requirement of these facilities, but we require it of ourselves. But then just to talk about the waste. So exterior-wise, we use something called canine grass. So underneath it is sedimentary rock, and then to the ground, to the dirt. So it's not sitting on top of pavement or anything like that. So liquid waste goes straight through. We disinfect exterior and interior every single night. We have a variety of clean materials, which I won't get into all the specifics about, to make sure all that gets rinsed through and cleaned out. Solid waste we pick up and dispose of overnight, and then we have a waste company that comes and picks up the waste from us from a dumpster that we take it to throughout the week, so that it doesn't get overloaded or any sort of exceeding smells or anything like that.
A dumpster on site or a dumpster off site?
So the dumpster we can do either way. I know that they have typically, like at our current facility, our open facility, way we typically do it, it would be stored away, away from the facility. I don't know where they have the dumpsters here. Yeah, so it's just where the landlord stores all their dumpsters is where we would typically add our dumpster.
And that's what I was looking for. There was 3 dumpsters back there. I didn't know if you required a separate dump. So you might need to look at that and see if there's space for a specific dumpster, how it'd be labeled for this special waste. I don't know. No, too much?
No, I'm just thinking, right, homeowners, it's going in regular waste, I would think, but I don't know. You're not suggesting that there needs to be a separate dumpster for animal waste, are you?
I don't know if there is.
Okay.
I'm asking.
No, it just goes into
Yeah.
regular waste. Just like, if you take your dog to a dog park, when they come and pick that up, it goes into regular
Okay.
waste or anything like that.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I just assumed. But.
Well, again, this is not my area. I'm
Yeah.
completely somewhat ignorant.
Okay.
there. So that's all. No.
Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Commissioner Landine?
Can I make a request when you guys come back? Can these exhibits be readable?
And that's not on y'all, just so you
Yeah.
know, they don't get enlarged, and if you enlarge them,
I get it. I just like to be able to know what we're looking at.
yeah, it would be helpful, larger exhibits. Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, first of all, I know a lot of people are throwing a lot of questions at you, but I want to tell you, I think most people up here are very supportive of new business in Sugar Land. We just want to make sure we do it right. And as someone is sitting on a, activity center committee right now, trying to find ways to bring new business to Sugar Land, thank you. You're part of that process, and you're part of the amenities we want to see in our community. So these questions are coming from people that just want to make sure we get it right. And I think you understand that. So thank you for everything you're offering. I had a question on the waste outside, because you're going to be combining rainwater with waste, and I'm sure the permitting process will go through that. But just looking at what you're doing in terms of the exterior paving and where that runoff goes, because I'm not sure you want to mix. And this is for permitting. I'm not sure you want to mix rainwater with that refuse in it when it needs to go into sanitary sewer. So that's probably something you'll want to look at there. And does that area need to be covered if you do that? Because that would typically be the deal if you're introducing bio products. It typically goes into sanitary sewer. So that's something you would want to look at. I'm going to assume that with the reduction of the parking there that you're taking in the fenced area, we're still okay on parking counts. We're good there. The fence looks nice, and I understand what you're trying to do there, but the rest of that center out there is masonry. Is there a reason why you wouldn't just consider going masonry to match what's there? I think I know the kind of fencing you're talking about, but a lot of times it does degrade. The sun does wreak havoc with it over a period of time. Why wouldn't you consider masonry?
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm open to other suggestions. If that's something, I need to take back to the franchisor, if that's a requirement, I could obviously go with them.
Yeah,
the main thing from our perspective is we want to make sure we have the height, so we don't have any dogs exiting. We want to make sure we've got structural ability in case of hurricanes, those type of things. We also need to make sure that it's not going to be a porous material that's going to absorb diseases or urine or anything like that. So something we can effectively clean. A lot of the actual stone things, you're not going to
but you could put
that out.
coatings on them, and there's in the building industry. So just something to consider that might match that look that we have over there in the Sugar Creek area. So, but no, otherwise, I think we need to answer the questions we have on the counts of animals, just so that we understand that. But again, I hope we can answer these questions and get you guys moving forward. Thank you for bringing the idea to Sugar Land.
Yeah, from my perspective, just a couple things. First of all, I think that this is a great concept. As I mentioned before, I live in the neighborhood, and I'd really like to see this work out for you guys, just on a personal level, and I know others would as well. That all having been said, on the fence, I want to make sure that I was impressed with the materials that were presented to us, particularly on the floor content for the outdoor area, and also I was impressed with the fence materials, because it sounded to me like you had taken the opacity into account so that the dogs aren't disturbed by people walking by, although I'm not sure there's a sidewalk there. There's no sidewalk on Parkway, but you could ride your bike by there or drive by there in a car. I think that's good. I would not want to see the fencing material lose its soundproofing capabilities as well. I thought I heard, Laura, you say that it kind of has an appearance of masonry, and I'll have to go think about, I'm not sure there's a lot of other fencing there in any event, but I would want to retain the soundproofing on that as well. Maybe if there's some other way to do it to make it look like whatever else is out there, which again, I don't know that there's a lot of that. I think that would be helpful too. The other thing I was going to ask you, Laura, looking at the site plan, or not actually that, but one of the other exhibits you had, like the only residential homes that are close to that are the ones that there's a cul-de-sac on Lakeside, right, that backs up. And it's not, what's the distance, you know, the distance between the closest residential home and this particular building?
I did not map that out, but I can do that for when we bring it back to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, so in light of what I'm hearing from the commission, I think we've got a concept here, but the commissioners would like to get some more information. So I want to give the applicant an opportunity to collect that information and come back before the commission. So I'm going to move that we table this item for the time being and return to it at a later meeting. Can I get a second? All right, we'll do a hand vote on this. All in favor? All right, the motion to table passes. Thank you. We'll look forward to hearing from you at a subsequent meeting. And thank you, Laura. Don't go anywhere, Laura. No, y'all are free to go. She's not. Okay, we will move on to item 4C, which is proposed rezoning from zero lot line single-family residential R1Z to estate single-family residential R1E for a proposed residential development at 1527 Burney Road. So, Laura, welcome back. Long time no here. Why don't you give us your presentation, and then we'll do the public hearing and move to discussion.
So this one should hopefully be quite a bit more
Oh,
straightforward.
don't say that, because if you want to guarantee controversy, say that.
Said hopefully. So this is a tract of land that is between Ganaway Lake and Oyster Creek on the north side of town. So this is just behind Imperial. Imperial is this green area you see there on the left of the map. It is currently zoned R1Z. It was zoned that way upon annexation back in 1990 because the original owner did want to develop it with a fairly dense housing product. However, he never moved forward with that. This property, so it has yet to be platted. It is currently still zoned R1Z. It is still vacant. And there is a new owner now that is proposing to redevelop it with 2 large estate-style homes. So it would need to go through this zoning in order to be able to move forward with that development. So again, it was annexed in 1990 and permanently zoned R1Z at that time. And the requested R1E zoning is to allow for 2 large homes on this property. And it will need to be platted and before permitting can move forward. The zoning is required before a plat can even be submitted because we gauge what type of plat as well as how many lots can be established based on those zoning regulations. So we do need to have this in place before we can move forward with platting to establish the lot size minimums and setbacks, things like that. And this proposed rezoning is not in conflict with our future land use map or with the comprehensive plan. So an aerial map, just to give you an idea of what the surrounding area looks like. It is primarily R1, single family residential. To the south across Oyster Creek, there is a very large single family lot here with just 1 house on it on a lot of land. And then there's Ganaway Lake and Park to the north and west. And then there is Sugar Mill to the east across Burney Road. There are some floodplain, floodway, and wetland regulations to work through on this site because of the proximity to the lake and Oyster Creek. But the applicant has been working very closely with our engineering department to work through those issues. Our future land use excerpt does show this designated as part of our Parks and Open Space Plan. However, because of the nature of the land use plan, it's not technically regulatory. It does not set zoning for any specific parcels. So the fact that this is on the edge of a residential park line is perfectly acceptable. That it's not going to be in conflict. And as mentioned to one of my coworkers earlier, R1E is as close as you can get to a park and open space without actually being park and recreation. It's a fairly low density housing product with minimum acreage at 3 acres or 1.5 acres, although the proposed minimum size acres lots are about 5 acres each, or just under 5. Public hearing notifications were met. Mailers were sent out to property owners within 200 feet, as well as published in a newspaper and on our website. Again, staff has not received any inquiries on this and is not aware of any opposition to the rezoning. Therefore, we do recommend holding the public hearing followed by CNA tonight, and we do support a recommendation of approval. The applicant is not here, but I can answer any questions on the property. We also have Robert with our engineering department to answer any questions you have on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. We'll receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on a proposed rezoning from zero lot line single for family residential R1Z to estate single family residential R1E for the proposed residential development at 1527 Bernie Road. Do you have anyone like to address the commission in public hearing? Going once, twice. I will close the public hearing and we'll move on to consideration and action on a recommendation for proposed rezoning from zero lot line single family residential R1Z to estate single family residential R1E for a proposed residential development at 1527 Bernie Road and member city council. Any discussion, commissioners? Any questions? I've got one. Go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. So I know it says here that you're working with all of the regulatory organizations, but if I look at the property, does Oyster Creek actually go through the property?
That's a drainage ditch, I believe, or a swale.
So it's just the edge of the property
Oyster Creek
then?
is the southern border of the property.
Okay. So as I was wondering if the, I think it's called like the Fort Bend Water Authority would have to be involved in any of this, like for the,
Not unless they do construction in the waterway, which they're not.
okay. And then my other question was, is that if, when this goes in play and they say this goes forward and they develop it out, will they be connecting the walkway that comes out there? Because right now I don't think there's even a sidewalk there along Bernie.
No, they will not have to put in any right-of-way improvements, including sidewalks. They would not have to
So
do
it'll
that.
still just be open?
Mhm.
Dang it. All right, thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, I just, how are the lots going to line up on this? Is it an east-west division? Is it a north-south?
It's a little bit of both. So there's actually, in the current tentative layout, there's kind of a little pocket here. And then over here, there's a deeper pocket.
Okay.
And then there's a reserve down here for the creek and the wetland area.
And I know you've addressed this already. You talked about that creek and wetland area. This is Ganaway Lake, which feeds our water supply, right? That's where the plant is on the north side of Ganaway Lake.
Yes, there is a
that's
place up
all-
there.
We feel good about that?
Good evening, Commissioners. Robert Wilson with engineering. Our surface water plant actually pulls off of Oyster Creek. You can see the 4 bays right here off screen, but they actually draw out of Oyster Creek.
So no concerns with
No
this at all?
concerns.
Okay, that's good. No, thank you. That's everything.
I have a question. So is it going to be, is the plan here to make this into 2 lots?
Correct.
Will either of the lots be larger than 5 acres?
No.
Okay, that answers my question. Any other discussion?
I have a question, probably for Robert. Can you put us through some remedial information here? Who owns the lake here? Is that private property? Is it owned by?
Ganaway Lake here?
Yes.
Is owned by the city.
Owned by the city.
Correct.
Okay. And then the parcel, the large acreage that's immediately to the south of what we're discussing, has a fairly hidden entrance. I know it's just 2 lots being proposed here, but just entrance and egress out of those 2. It's probably not a concern, but I'm hopeful that the city's at least thinking about.
We've seen some preliminary plans with working with planning for layouts with the owner to have driveways that connect up here to Bernie Road that would meet site distance requirements.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's all I had. It's a interesting project, but I suppose if the land's there and it meets all the requirements, good on them. So thanks.
As long as neither of the lots larger than 5 acres.
Well, and if one of them is larger than 5 acres, then we'll be back.
And then I will ask whether or not you'll permit livestock on it.
Oh, okay. We'll be looking at some deed restrictions at that point.
Okay, very good. See, I read the R1E thing. I didn't. Got to get one every now and then, even a blind squirrel. Okay, any further discussion? Okay. All right. Hearing no further discussion, I will make a motion that we recommend approval of the proposed rezoning from zero lot line single-family residential R1Z to estate single-family residential R1E for a proposed residential development at 1527 Bernie Road to members of City Council. Is there a second?
I will second.
I've got a second from Commissioner Landine. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Laura. I would thank the applicant, but they're not here, so I won't. And thank you very much, commissioners. Okay, item 4D. At this time, we will hear a report regarding a proposed amendment to ordinance number 1869, allowing for additional fuel dispensing stations at the Costco fueling facility at 17520 Southwest Freeway. Hello again, Laura. How are you?
Didn't go far this time. So,
Awesome.
Fourth item before you tonight is another public hearing. So this is for an amendment to the existing Costco wholesale facility at 59 and Wallingford. I'm sure most of you are familiar. If you haven't shopped there, you probably have driven past it at some point or another. So this site currently has 8 pumps in 16 fueling stations, because each pump has 2 stations. The current ordinance allows for a maximum of 10 pumps and 20 fueling stations. The request that has currently come to us from Costco is to add an extra row behind rather than an extra aisle. So they would like to add 4 pumps across the back to create 8 additional fueling stations, which would exceed that 20 cap. So the amendment would remove that numerical cap in Exhibit B in the text, and the new regulation that would replace it is that the site simply follow the site plan layout, which has been updated to show the additional 4 pumps. Internal and external circulation at this site was closely analyzed. There was a TIA performed and concurred with, and there is a site driveway and internal layout that has been redesigned and gone through a site plan revision already and is moving forward into building permit processing this week. And then will be under construction extremely soon to improve the internal and external traffic on site. And then once the PD, or if the PD is amended, they would then go through a site plan and building permit process to add the fuel pump stations after the construction has completed to alleviate the current traffic and circulation issues. So the overall site plan here, this is the new updated overall site plan. This is going to be part of the proposed amendment. And here you can see an additional driveway here, an additional driveway here. And then this driveway here that is nearby the pumps has been widened as well to help with some of that internal circulation. And then you can also see the new row of 4 pumps along the back here. An enlarged site plan, just so you can get a closer zoom in of the 4 pumps. This is not to be codified, as the original document did not include a zoomed in site plan, although you could add the exhibit if you think it's necessary as a condition. But this, again, I just wanted to show you the zoomed in site plan. So you can see there's the initial row of 4, and then the second row of 4 pumps. And then these are the 4 pumps that they want to add at the back of the station. So this would mean a third row of cars that is right now waiting to move up to the pumps would then be able to be filling at the same time. The included elevations of the canopy to show that it is that the nicer quality masonry wrapped and full roof on the canopies. This is just showing the new dimensions to make sure that it's covering the third row of pumps. These are the 2 pages excerpts from the Exhibit B and B2 that show where the text actually changed. So previously there was a here at letter D, there was a numerical cap. Now it says the pump islands and positions will be constructed in accordance with the site plan. So instead of a numerical cap, it just follows the site plan layout. And then over here, it is the similar situation. Staff does recommend holding the public hearing tonight, followed by consideration and action. And we do support a recommendation of approval to Mayor and City Council for this amendment. And we have the applicant here to answer any questions for you at the close of the public hearing. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Laura. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. We will receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on a proposed amendment to ordinance number 1869, allowing for additional fuel dispensing stations at the Costco fueling facility at 17520 Southwest Freeway. Would anyone like to address the commission in public hearing? Last call. Okay, I will close the public hearing and we will move on to consideration and action. Questions from any commissioners? Commissioner DeWood?
Yes, hi. When you remove the language from numeric to a site plan, is that site plan going to be codified or yes?
Yes.
So it does, whether it's numeric or it's graphic, it does limit it to an expansion of 4 only.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's it for now.
Commissioner Smith?
So along the same questions, then if we change the verbiage here, then does that then open up the ability then for like others like Kroger and say HEB or whatever to come in and add pumps as well then?
So this is a PD specific to Costco. And that verbiage was a number that was proposed because at the time, that's how many pump stations they were proposing. They didn't end up building that 5th island, so they didn't, they had 2 extra. But now that instead of adding an extra island, they want to add an extra row at the back. If HEB or Walmart or Sam's Club wanted to change and amend their PDs to add more pump stations, they have that right to request that at any point.
So there's nothing the city had in place that said, okay, hey, we just want to limit the number of pumps.
Correct. It was an arbitrary number at the time based on the plans that were proposed.
So I understand it sounds like we're trying to get traffic to flow more freely, but by adding 4 more pumps, aren't we really adding more traffic?
So that was analyzed and that was discussed in part of the TIA. But I also want to keep in mind that Costco is a members type facility. So whenever you come there, you're kind of going there because you're a Costco member. It's not necessarily a destination that's going to attract anybody driving by. But here is Robert.
Yeah, I understand, but there's usually a lot of traffic in that area in general, just for Costco. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the TIA was analyzed to see what traffic volumes would do for that area. The main things that we came back on it were that the improvements for the driveways needed to occur to get traffic back out onto public roadway and off of public roadway faster and more efficient. And then there's some modifications to the public right of way that we're working with TxDOT to add to 59 to get traffic to flow better.
Okay, so you don't foresee then traffic or people waiting, now maybe bringing in more traffic and waiting into the parking lot?
Correct. That was the purpose of the TIA, was to modify their circulation and queuing plans for the fuel stations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you have questions, yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Commissioner Hart?
One, I applaud the applicant. This is an infamous design, probably the worst design in the city of Sugar Land. It's terrible. Everybody knows about it. So I applaud everybody that's trying to correct it. That being said, I don't see how that driveway is too close to 59. It always has been. I don't see how we corrected that. The egress has been addressed with a turn lane going out to the right because everybody got backed up, stopped going left. But the ingress from Highway 59, that distance is too short. It's always clogged, and it always backs up onto 59. The secondary driveway coming in, nobody's going to take it to turn in because they're going to stay in this line because it's the closest one. I don't know what the traffic impact analysis says, but I've driven for 30 years. I know people take the first driveway. That being said, I don't know that other. Can we see the internal traffic pattern that they were going to? Because I always go back behind Costco to leave and go back to Westcott, and I totally just bypass anything that has to do with that turn out onto Wallingsford.
So that was part of the exhibit. Yeah, I went too many. Right here, this one. So that was part of the reasoning about these 2 driveways, was to allow people that are not at the fuel station.
But you got to go through the parking lot. It's full of cars. It's full of traffic, and they're backed up. They can't get into this one. The people can't. That's why I said I don't see any improvement because of the distance between 59 and the driveway in, and the distance from Wallingford to the entrance into the fueling station. Neither one of those has changed. So it's still, and you're not changing the traffic pattern for either one of those, even though you tried to change it to the south. I did traffic before, so I'm not, unlike the animal shelter, I've done traffic. So I don't see how that, without looking at the internal traffic pattern, unless you're going to guide people
There
out
is
to a
so-
specific exit, why would they go out to that driveway? I don't even know if people are going to know that driveway is there.
So
for a
there
long time.
is on the site plan revision is coming, correct? Yeah. There is signage for, it's out here, that states the right-hand turn, straight lanes for fuel and store, to try to direct the driver up to this entrance, which now will have a realignment to get people into this lane that goes up to the store in an effort to circulate traffic better.
So to try to, okay, so you have some kind of signage.
Correct.
To have them try to bypass.
Correct.
That driveway if
Try-
they're going
try
into
to
the
only-
store rather than just funnel everybody through that one.
Correct. Try to
Okay.
circulate the fuel customers only
That's fair.
to this one.
That's fair. I don't know. I still have, I still wonder when they get out. I'd just like to see it. I don't know if you have it, how you anticipate them routing around. Because again, it just bottlenecks at that four-way stop right there at the corner. And that distance is still, you can only queue so many cars, and that hasn't changed. And I'm sorry, I'm pointing at my screen because I had to zoom in because I couldn't see it on that. I apologize. Talking to myself and my next door neighbor. I just, like I'm saying, I'm applauding the effort. I just want to make sure it's the right effort and we correct it because it's a heinous situation that's over there. What's your question? What does the traffic pattern look like? What's the anticipated traffic pattern internal to Costco? And again, that's probably not on them as much it is as on the city. I'm not.
It is so the city requires them to keep their traffic off the public right of way. So that is part of their queuing plan. We can share that. I mean, I guess outside the meeting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is part of a site plan that they've submitted.
Okay. The other comment I would have is that additional driveway just down. So the first driveway, the existing driveway, the plaza across the street. I was here for that one, and I that little only left turnout or right turnout, not across. But yeah, that's mine because I suggest doing the same thing at the other drive so that they don't cut across the street, go from one to the other. Maybe that's not as much of an issue because it's further from 59, but I was very concerned about that when it was in the proximity it had before. Cutting from driveway to driveway, because aren't they aligned right across from each other?
So the new driveway is proposed to be aligned. Yes, that's per our standard regulations. That driveway's aligned. Unfortunately, we cannot require another property owner to change their property for this amendment. So this property here, where you're asking us to add the triangle here, we cannot require them to change any of their driveways because Costco wants to change theirs.
But the city can change it. It's in city right away.
No, it would be on, I believe it would be on the private side here, unless I'm mistaken.
Anyway, I would just look at it. That's all from a safety standpoint, cutting straight across with that traffic pattern.
Other questions? Yep, Commissioner Brown, I've got some too, but go ahead, please.
Perfect. Thank you. I went over there and spent some time looking in that parking lot where you fuel. And once those cars come in and make that rotation get in line for those fueling stations, it continually looked like the maximum comfortable queuing line would be 3. Nobody queued more than 3 in any given time, unless on a Saturday where they would back up waiting to make a left to get into pumps. If you're adding another row of pumps, let's say you had that third car in there, your queuing's at about 2. And I guess my question is, and this is where your traffic analysis comes in, you're adding more pumps, you're inviting more people to come get gas. That's more cars. Do you have the room in here to handle that circulation? Or in doing so, are you going to back up traffic coming into this parking lot, which is coming in off the road, which comes in off 59.
So part of the TIA does include a queuing analysis, which evaluates the maximum queue lengths, and they do not stack into public right of way.
They do not.
Correct.
Because I've seen some Costco's, because the gas is significantly less expensive, at times of when the gas prices get high, you can get significant queuing. So I just want to make sure that we've looked at that, and because, again, it contributes to what Commissioner Hart is concerned about, which is that traffic coming in. So, okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Bree.
Not to beat a dead horse, right? And sorry to use an animal analogy since we've been talking about that a lot today, but I think Chuck asked the question, right? And I'm familiar with that area as well. Did the TIA include the retail that's behind or adjacent to Costco as well? Because while the model may show that the queuing and the flow for just the gas station may be okay, a lot of the retail traffic flows towards 59, and there's that, I forget the name of the road, but I think you mentioned it. Traffic gets stuck there quite a bit. So I was just curious if the scope included all of that retail that's in
So
that
the city actually evaluated this in our model that encompassed Wallingford,
that's the street.
Westcott, Telfair, University Boulevard. It also paired with parts of the University Boulevard widening, some of the Brazos River turnaround impacts. So we could put this improvements for 59 with TxDOT. So that was part of that analysis.
And also, since we're adding more pumps, was there any concern about increased hazardous waste material, anything of that nature?
So they're actually not adding any additional underground pumps. There's just going to be one additional tanker truck that comes by each week.
Okay, that is interesting. And then on the construction, for them to add the pumps, what's the expected duration of that construction? What's the disruption going to look like?
Good evening.
Exactly.
Good evening. I was waiting to get up here and say a couple words.
I was wondering, you're sitting there for a reason.
Yes. So,
please introduce yourself quickly for the record, and then welcome and love to hear from you.
Great. Larry Jurczyk with J&L Design. I'm representing Costco tonight. So the construction duration is approximately 60 days.
Okay.
It's relatively quick.
That's fast.
We're looking at two different types of phasing plans, and the one plan that's on the table right now, the fuel station may be shut down for 3 days in order to achieve that. If it's not shut down for 3 days, we may extend it another 15 days or so, but there's ways around it. Our gas contractor does probably 90% of all gas stations across the country, and they're really good. And so we just do not want to disrupt traffic flow, everything we just talked about tonight. So,
Cool. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
That's all I had, Matt.
A few questions. So, Laura, what's ordinance number 1869?
That is the current ordinance that governs the Costco site.
How did it get there?
I'm not sure.
Like, this is Schoolhouse Rock question. Like,
council, P&Z and council have to approve them. So.
Okay, so whatever the current configuration of that site is, was presented to P&Z, approved by P&Z, and approved to council, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So we bear probably some responsibility, some historic permutation of this group has some responsibility. So I'll tell you from my own perspective, I'm a member, and when I saw the proposal was for increasing the number of pumps, I was like, no way, this is terrible. However, I looked at the plant, and it appeared to be pretty thoughtful to me. And so my question, either for city staff and or the applicant, is, can you walk us through, number one, why you developed this plan, and number two, why you think that the queuing that's being proposed in here is actually going to alleviate some of the congestion that exists on that site right now?
So I'll let Larry walk you through some of that thought process.
yeah. So let me just start by saying, very good question. And I'm asked that a lot. So Costco has undertaken a nationwide gas expansion program. So this is not the first fuel station that we're looking at adding another row of pumps. We have done a lot of research. Costco is a large corporation, as you know. So we have a gas sector or gas section, and these gentlemen that I work with are experts on determining older fuel stations, older warehouses. This fuel station was built in 2013. And with just the price of gas, we are finding across the board influx of traffic and queuing issues on multiple sites all over from California to New Jersey. So adding another row of pumps, what it's doing is basically the cars that are in queue today, instead of waiting, and actually I was out at the station today for about 3 hours, and I was looking, and your assessment was correct. There were about 2 cars in line. I never saw 3, although our TIA says that during peak hours, and we haven't really touched on the peak hours, but Saturdays and Sundays, there's certain peak hours. It could go 3 plus. But we believe we have enough stacking distance from the back of the curb to the new fuel line, as it were. We're looking at about 100 to about 130 feet, and we're within that range. We don't believe there's going to be any issues with cars queuing and stacking back and backing up into Wallingford. I mean, we're trying to avoid that. So we're processing the cars that are in line today. They're just not in front of a fueling station. So putting those cars in front of a fueling station will make that line move faster. That's our goal.
I appreciate that. A corollary question is, in your experience at other facilities, does adding pumps actually increase the number of people that come there to get gas?
A slight increase. It does. And I think our TIA, right, it does indicate during peak hours that there will be slightly some more cars. But we believe we're going to handle that. We're going to take care of that with this added row of pumps.
Okay, thank you. And I'll ask Laura, this is for you. So would you say that that the applicant has worked cooperatively with city staff to address these issues and make this proposal?
Definitely,
And
yes.
so is it fair to say that this proposal reflects the best reasoned judgment of city staff, including having taken into account the TIA and also the applicant, and based on their experience with how to address these kind of issues at other properties?
So this, just to give you an idea of how long we've been working on this, it did originally come in 2019. So it has been, there was a pause because of the COVID issues, but this has definitely been in the works for a very long time. And there's been a lot of back and forth. And part of the reason that we're before you tonight with an updated site plan that includes revised site plans that have already been approved with the additional driveways is because when they originally came wanting to add 4 pumps, we said, you need to hold on and fix your existing internal circulation before you think about adding pumps. So that's why we're doing it in this order. That's why we're doing it as we are now, and why it's taken so long to get here is because we've been negotiating how to fix the internal circulation that already exists before we even think about increasing any additional attraction.
And could you talk about some of the signage changes that are proposed here as
So
well?
as Robert was mentioning, part of the revised site plan does include signage. So that's going to be at one sign here at this entrance that says gas sales need to turn right, and that Costco store members need to go straight. And then there will be signage up here that says for entering the store, please turn here. For gas sales, please continue to this front entrance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval for a proposed amendment to ordinance number 1869, allowing for additional fuel dispensing stations at the Costco fueling facility at 17520 Southwest Freeway to the members of City Council.
I've got a motion to make a recommendation of approval from Commissioner Landine. I'll second it. Any other discussion? All right, let's vote, please. Are you an aye? Are you a yes? All right, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much to the applicant. Thank you very much to city staff. I think we can all agree that we are very hopeful that this will alleviate some of the issues there. So thanks very much for your time, your cooperation, and your work on that item. Item 5A, consideration of and action on a 1-year plat extension for the park at Eldridge final plat. Who should we have? Oh, Laura. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are approaching the end of our marathon. The park at Eldridge was a plat that came before commission back in 2021. So that was February 9th, and the same conditions still applied that the plat was approved with. There was a first extension granted about a year ago, February 8th in 2022. And again, it's a 1-year extension, so they are back again for one more extension to allow for more time for recordation. This is not a re-review of the plat, it's just extending the previous approval. As mentioned, as in the report, this is a just over 20-acre site. It is zoned R1Z and is proposed plat for 89 lots in 11 reserves and 2 blocks. And the reason for the extension is to finish up some final details on the infrastructure work. So the code requires that all the infrastructure either be installed or a security check for the evaluation of installation be given to the city. And Mr. Carmichael with Carmichael Development has chosen to install his infrastructure. They're close to finishing it, but they don't want to push that timeline for February 8th of 2023. So they're asking for the extension just to make sure that they have plenty of time. So an overview, just to kind of maybe jog your memory. We also have some new members. There are, this is the plat that was approved with a few conditions a couple of years ago. It includes 2 access points as well as several small cul-de-sacs. And as I mentioned, they are almost done with their infrastructure, just working on some final details on that. Because of the simple, straightforward nature, staff does recommend approval of the final plat extension.
Thanks, Laura. Any questions? Anyone have any questions at all? Well, never promise just one.
One real
All right.
quick clarification.
There may be another. You
Okay,
never know.
well, just one from me. Just if they want to change it, they just have to bring it back to us, right? That's all.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have.
Do you have questions?
No, I was going to actually no, I don't have any questions. So I've got a motion to approve a 1-year plat extension for the park at Eldridge final plat from Commissioner Landine. I believe I heard a second from Commissioner Brown. Any other discussion? All right, let's vote. No. All right. Well, we had it and it just disappeared. Nope, there it is. Commissioner Brown, are you a yes? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Item 6A, Planning and Zoning Commission liaison reports from City Council meetings in December and January. Before we hear any of those reports, I'm going to thank Lisa for sending out a reminder to the commissioners that we had some reports on the agenda as usual. Do we have anyone in attendance tonight that attended either the December meetings or the January meetings to report? Commissioner DeWood. Oh, well, let's do the item on the agenda. Is anyone giving a liaison report tonight? Go ahead, Commissioner. Oh, there's nothing related. I heard nothing related to planning and zoning. All right, who had January? Go ahead, Commissioner.
So on the January 17th, there was a number of recognitions for teams that are state champions, which I thought was sort of fun for a city council meeting. And then there was a bond approval, and then there was the closed session for the deliberation regarding the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and the deliberation to offer financial or other incentive to a business prospect if the city seeks to have locate, stay, or expand near the city. I think this sort of then lays into the next meeting a bit, with our workshop, where we discuss the proposal of the Imperial Historical Development Plan and the proposed change to the land use plan.
How'd that go? No, I'm just kidding. We were all there. Okay, thank you. All right, item 6B, city staff report. I was going to say, right. Laura's you're not doing it. I mean, have we ever had a clean sweep before like that? Now we don't. I have to wait again for the next opportunity to have 6 agenda items.
We'll get.
All right, Lauren, what do you got?
I'm kidding. So February we'll have 2 meetings, the 14th and the 23rd. They're back-to-back weeks. We will have the Imperial item that Commissioner Smith was mentioning that we had the workshop on 2 days ago. So that will be on the February 14th meeting for public hearing, and we would ask for consideration and action that evening as well. Yes.
You can ask.
We'll talk about it on the 14th. Yes.
May I
And
ask, I realize I'm can I ask a
That's all right, I
question? Do you know at this point in time, is what we're going to see on that item, is that going to be what is it going to be? Is it
yeah,
gonna
so
be
the
preliminary
agenda
development
item
plan?
on the 14th will be the general development plan and the amendment to the land use plan
Okay.
for the Imperial
For the
Regional
cap.
Activity
Okay,
Center.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
just wanted to know what we were going to.
Yes, that's what will be that's the action.
All right.
Yes. And a couple other items, a couple other zoning items on both the 14th and the 23rd that will take care of at those meetings. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Anything further?
Motion to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn. I'm going to give it to Commissioner Hart with a second by Commissioner Landine. All in favor? That passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good night.